forget. There you go. It's a miracle. And then if I could ask John now to speak with us for 10, 15 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks for the invitation to speak. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to see some familiar faces and to put some faces to some familiar names as well. It's brilliant to be here. So I'm John Sloper and co-founded Help and Kindness. My colleague Wendy Allwood is here as well. Help and Kindness is about joining the dots. So we join the dots between people and organisations and groups. We work predominantly in the voluntary community sector and help people to find help, give help and work together. There's so many things that we've got our fingers in all sorts of pies because people just ask us to kind of find people to work with, or do we know so and so? Have we come across such and such? And gradually we've got to know all sorts of things about Dorset. We've been doing this for about 5 years as a community interest company. And over the last couple of years, particularly working with local authority and public sector partners in the NHS, my interest in food and food security has been a long one. But in the time that I've been involved in Help and Kindness, we've had the privilege of being involved with lots of different food projects. So some of you I know because of our work with the emergency and affordable food provision across Dorset. The amazing food banks, larders, fridges, social supermarkets that sprung up, many of which morphed out of organisations and groups that started within lockdown, and the response that we made across Dorset to the demands of COVID and the changing way that we had to live our lives during the early days within the COVID pandemic. Off the back of that, we've then got involved with the Food Security Network in Dorset, which is it's jointly run by Dorset Council and Public Health Dorset, and we've sat in that group to kind of facilitate conversation between the community and the other networks that exist across the county, helping to provide information and support and just kind of join people up, as I said, join the dots. More latterly, I've got involved with setting up the Voluntary Community Sector Assembly for Dorset, which is something that's just emerging at the moment. And that was involves kind of bringing people together, or bringing representation of the voluntary community sector into dialogue with our statutory partners in a formal way. So as you probably know, the new NHS entity, which is called the Integrated Care System, and which has an integrated care partnership, an integrated care board, and all sorts of other integrations along the way, is about doing work better together. So that's all sorts of things from, how we strategically understand the work of health and well-being in Dorset, to very practical things like how we help people stay safe and well this winter. I've come off a meeting this afternoon, which has been planning for the surge that we expect with flu and various other things like that. So we get involved in all sorts of interesting things. But in the context of food specifically, that conversation has been ongoing and developing and becoming more and more rich. It's great to have Daisy on the call here today as well, who's an absolutely brilliant colleague. And we've had many conversations about how we understand the food landscape for Dorset, and through our particular voluntary community sector and local authority kind of dialogue, really. So in Help and Kindness, not only do we have lots of contact with the emergency and affordable food projects, but we also have lots of contact with people, brilliant people like Candida, and others that are working in the community to provide all sorts of food support in all sorts of different ways, from people who are teaching children to grow their own food, to help them to cook it, to look at providing food advice and guidance for people who are on super low incomes, the kind of heat and eat debate, working alongside colleagues in the council on the cost of living and how that's impacted on people's ability to eat nutritiously and support one another. And then looking at a broader picture in terms of the wider kind of economics and the nature of our food networks in Dorset as a kind of net importer of food, as most of the UK is, and how we can do better to bring people together to have those discussions. One of the things that's been very interesting in terms of being involved with the NHS and sitting at the moment, I have a place on the board of the Integrated Care Board, which runs Dorset NHS, is listening to the conversations that are going on within that kind of public sector space about the importance of food and the importance of resilience and self-reliance, and seeing this as one of the big agendas around health and well-being in our county. How do we get nutritious food in front of people? How do we grow it? How do we make it accessible to people? How can we make it more affordable? What can we do differently in the way that we work together to improve the food provision in Dorset and to make it more self-reliant? Conversations floating around various meetings have included, why aren't we using our public estate, so the landscapes around our public buildings, as grow spaces? That's something that's on offer. Why aren't we using more of our purchasing power within our public sector in order to buy food for our school meals and for our hospital meals? These are conversations not coming from me, these are coming from NHS and local authority colleagues. So from my point of view, it's offering you a kind of opportunity to be a little bridge here, perhaps, and Daisy's a fantastic bridge builder in this way as well, and to find ways where we can draw together and collaborate and find ways to have these bigger conversations that go beyond just very small scale projects, but looking at a culture shift and looking at a change in some of our large anchor institutions, as well as in our communities and in our towns. This year in the spring, Help and Kindness, Dorset Council and Public Health Dorset ran a joint event called Feeding Dorset, which I think some of you might have heard about and some of you attended, where we got together to do two things. The first part of our event was to look at supporting the affordable emergency food projects and to help people kind of just connect with one another and look at how they were doing and what their needs were. And that was everything from helping to support volunteers, dealing with the kind of stress and the kind of impact of listening to people's stories of living in poverty and the difference, you know, in life that that many people live with day to day, that is goes home with you, and looking to support the volunteers and the organisers of those emergency projects. So we spent the first half of the session of the day looking at those and building a greater kind of sense of connection and collaboration, and looking at the needs that were there, including some financial ones as well. And then the second half of the event was looking at the wider network. So looking at the places of inspiration and growth where people are doing amazing things in amazing places. Projects that are growing their food in, you know, on council estates or in social housing. Looking at people that are doing amazing things like the food links, who are going out and actually putting on events for children and activities in community village halls and so on, to help people get together, make the food go further, and also learn some skills along the way, and by the way, having a good time. So there's some really, really good projects we're able to focus on, but we wanted to take that agenda one step further and to then look at these kind of larger scale economic and sort of community issues about where we get our food from in Dorset, how we can make the food more accessible, and how we can use food and grow food locally in different ways. And so we've been gathering that information after that particular event, and we're going to be putting on a second event in October, which is Feeding Dorset 2, original title, but it's going to do what it says on the tin. We're going to look at how we can take these conversations further, preparing for the winter pressures for the affordable and emergency food projects, but taking that bigger conversation on about how food works in Dorset, what's working well, what's not working well, what examples, what heroes can we draw on and listen to see how we can do things differently. And as you know, Dorset is a wonderful place to live, but it has some very, very special characteristics. No transport apparently is a special characteristic of Dorset, so we can't get to supermarkets if we want to get affordable food. We've also got land, which is an amazing commodity, which we have in all sorts of different shapes and spaces. We've had conversations, for instance, with housing associations who are keen to use some of their land to plant fruit trees rather than ornamental trees in their gardens. We've had conversations about gleaning. We've had conversations about all sorts of amazing things. But we want to get people back together in the room and to see where we go next. The conversation that this meeting this evening and was led me to be here arose from my colleague Wendy speaking to Sandra and getting to know about the sustainable food places. And we were thinking, well, actually, perhaps this is a chance for us to go on a bit of a journey together with Dorset Climate Action Network and to see if we can uncover what things might look like if we all took a step forward together, and if we in Help and Kindness can facilitate some of those conversations with our public sector partners and the commercial sector as well, because we've got some quite good conversations going with the local enterprise partnership and so on. Could we actually change some things? Could we actually make some differences? Could we get some people together in ways that stimulate new ideas and new connections and more sustainable food and more self-reliance in Dorset, so that we can be more resilient when the next pandemic or equivalent happens? We know that we're in for more storms. We know that we're in for lots more power cuts. We know that probably we might even have some more of these kind of pandemic-like experiences. Now, how can we ride those things out together and be more resilient, as well as turning the dial on climate change as well, if we can possibly manage that? So big aspirations, but just to throw our hat in the ring and say we're up for the journey. If you'd like to be on that journey with us, we can join you, and very happy in a due course to kind of take some questions. But I hope that's a good starter for 10.
John, thank you very much. I forgot to talk about jazz hands. If we can show your appreciation for that as and when, thank you so much. That's a fantastic introduction. And I should also say that just to make clear that the role of Dorset Climate Action Network in all of this is simply the networking side of things, that we're keen to support that. All organisations who might like to be involved in this particular journey. We're certainly not wanting to take the lead on anything. Okay, so just to make that clear, we've got enough going on, but I'm very, very happy to be here. So yes, so could I ask Callum, could you introduce us a little bit more to the sustainable food places, and then we'll have some questions time.
Sure, thanks, Sandra, and thanks, John, because what a great introduction to partnership working. I mean, I wrote down a few lovely little bylines there. Doing work better together. Well, that was great. A step forward together. And I think you characterized it really well there in terms of why we work in partnership. But I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to what that looks like at a network level. So a partnership of partnerships, if you like. So I'm Callum. I'm the impact lead for the Sustainable Food Places program. So this is actually the first time I've delivered this presentation. It's usually my colleagues, but everybody, of course, is on holiday at the moment. But my role really is to try and capture what our impact looks like as a network. We have lots of challenges there, of course, because capturing impact at partnership levels, but also working at a systems level, as we do, is a tricky challenge. And we're going to come on to talk a little bit more about how the Sustainable Food Places program might be able to help you work through that challenge as well. But I'll just go ahead and share my screen. I've just got a very short Canva presentation. Are you able to see that? Is that shared over? Looking for some nodding heads? No, that's a no. Let me try that one again. Bear with me a second. Oh, that looks like I might have done it. Looking good. Excellent. Okay. So the Sustainable Food Places program, we've been around for a while now. We started in 2013, and the idea really was to acknowledge that there were multiple food partnerships or local food networks that were working in cities at the time. And we wanted to connect them together, do some of that partnership working that they were already demonstrating at a local level, and help that at a wider level, at a national level, to be able to facilitate those bridges, as John talked about, in terms of being able to coordinate action and to share learning across a broader network. And that's what we still do. Oh, just the agenda and what we're going to talk about today, a little bit of an introduction on Sustainable Food Places, and then a little bit of a spiel of why we think it might be valuable for you to join, and then a little bit of an intro into how you can go about that joining process. So yeah, that's what we continue to do. We now have 91 food partnerships that are a part of the Sustainable Food Places network, so since 2013, and it's growing very quickly. It's growing all the time. Both, I think, in terms of people acknowledging the importance of that partnership working, but also, of course, these growing pressures that we know in the food system. And this map has changed a lot over that time. We now work across 4 nations, so our partnerships are based in England, Northern Ireland, Wales, and in Scotland. And the other big change, which I think is particularly relevant to you in Dorset, is the sort of geographies that we now work at. So our partnerships used to be based in cities. We used to be called the Sustainable Food Cities program. And then in the start of this phase, which started in 2019, we've gone through this process of adapting and extending. of realizing that partnership working isn't just valuable in cities, but it's valuable on different levels. So whether that's in boroughs or in districts or in counties, and looking at how partnerships can help facilitate those bridges, those linkages between urban centres and rural hinterland, and the importance of those interactions. So right now we have this network of 91 pioneering food partnerships that cover these towns, cities, boroughs, districts, and counties across the UK, and all ultimately seeking to drive change in their local food system. The program itself, we're a partnership organization of Food Matters, the organization I work for alongside the Soil Association and Sustain. And our role in the network is to help establish those cross-sector partnerships involving local authority, public sector bodies, as well as third sector organizations, businesses and academic organizations, and to support them in that development process. So to develop a vision and a strategy, an action plan to making that happen. And then we support partnerships along that journey of delivering that action plan and continuing on their progression towards becoming a sustainable food city. I won't go too much into this in terms of why a food partnership, because I think John did a much better job of capturing that than I would. But we start from a place of acknowledging the sort of the disparate landscape of local food systems, of so many actors doing so many different things, whether it's food banks working around providing emergency food aid, whether it's public health looking at nutrition, or whether it's people working in climate networks working on climate change. And acknowledging that lots of those actors, lots of those people often have similar ambitions, or ultimately all trying to head towards a similar direction of bringing about more sustainable, more fair food. But also acknowledgement that they tend to be doing it in slightly different ways, in disjointed and disconnected ways. And at its foundation, the rationale, if you like, for food partnership is about bringing people together to create that shared vision so that everybody is sort of walking towards the same direction. And an emphasis there on doesn't necessarily mean everybody's walking in the same way towards that direction. And this will come up a few times in the presentation, emphasizing that our approach is not meant to be a model of how you should go about doing this, and a real emphasis that however you form a partnership or a network or whatever works in your context is about that context and is about the place in which you work in and what makes sense for you. So we don't approach this with any kind of territorial perspective around feeling like you should necessarily join the Sustainable Food Places Network. This is just one approach, and and I'll walk you through how we approach it at least. So we start from that position of understanding that we need to join up this disconnected food system, and to do that we need to coordinate action and change, and we do that by developing a vision for the city and a strategy for the city, which has buy-in from those diverse, disparate stakeholders. But more than that, it's also a place to help to represent those places in which you work. So food partnerships, as much as they are about high-level strategy and action planning, they're also about representation, and they're also about the people that live in the places that you live in your context, and ensuring that those people, those communities, are represented in those strategies and those action plans. So the Sustainable Food Places approach is a way of taking people through a development process, which helps to ensure that community engagement is embedded into that process and ensure that community voices are heard within that space. And that they are involved in a co-development of solutions to complex local problems. So then rather than coming with a model suggesting this is a food partnership, what we do is provide resources on process. So how you can think about your partnership development, to think about how you can do those things, how you can bring diverse stakeholders, how you can coordinate action, how you can create a shared vision and action plan, and how you can build those spaces for community engagement and community representation. Broader question of then, well, okay, so if that's what food partnerships are supposed to do, well, how do they do it? And there really is no one answer to that. In fact, each one of our 91 food partnerships do it in a very different way. There is no one approach to being a food partnership. Some don't even call themselves partnership. It could be a network, or it can be much more informal than that in terms of a group of actors just getting together to share knowledge. But there are a few key things that kind of unite a food partnership. Some of them we've talked about already, so lots direct strategy and action planning. Many deliver projects and services. So that could be, for example, supporting the running of a food bank or a food pantry, but it could also be running a climate action project locally. There's always this focus on transformation, a word so easily thrown around these days, but the way that we use that is by rooting the change that we're looking for in social and environmental justice, ensuring that, again, the communities are represented in that space, and that structural changes are taking place in terms of who's involved in decision-making processes in the governance of the food system. All our food partnerships facilitate learning in one way or another. We can think about that as an education role, but also as a knowledge sharing role. And all of our partnerships have a role in influencing and amplifying local work. So whether that be influencing local policy, or that might be amplifying the work of a partner organization. And increasingly, we find our partnerships all involved in some kind of coordination of response. Some wish to be less so, but food partnerships have been very much brought into sort of resilience building, if you like, or certainly responding to emergencies. And some independent research by UWE recently, I can share that in the chat later, has looked into the role of food partnerships in providing that emergency response, and has found how they can amplify that resilience building by creating that response being more connected, by being more equitable, and driving change in ways that match the needs of local people. So we don't have a model for a food partnerships or an approach, but we do have a set of a framework that we encourage partnerships to explore their work through. And this we call our 6 themes, and they attempt to capture sort of the complexity of a food system, if you like, and give you a framework for thinking about how you can work across different aspects of a food system. And one of the things that we look for in a partnership who wishes to join the network is some kind of work around each of these 6 issues, because we believe that systems change is needed, and siloed work won't deliver that. So we want to see partnerships working to some degree across these different 6 themes. The 6 themes are food governance and strategy, so taking a strategic and collaborative approach to food governance, building a good food movement, so we're talking about building public awareness and active food citizenship, healthy food for all, so tackling food poverty and diet-related illness, creating access to affordable, healthy food, but also building a sustainable food economy, so ensuring that there is a local, bustling food economy that might feed into catering and procurement and local food supply chains, and ultimately that produces food and transports foods and disposes of waste food in ways that are good for the planet and that help tackle climate change and address the nature emergency that we face. In the Sustainable Food Places program, we also offer an award scheme. So sustainable food places can apply to receive an award. And we have bronze, silver, and gold. We currently have 20 bronze awardees, 7 silver, and 2 gold. And what these offer is a way of benchmarking and celebrating success across your work in your local food system. This has proven a particularly effective tool working with local authorities who like to be able to celebrate the work of their city or town or place. And that's something that we work with you to help put together an application for. And it's a way of really just sort of understanding the impact that you're having across your partnership. And then we also, alongside our partner Sustain, run a series of campaigns which we proactively engage members in. For example, a few here: Veg Cities, Sugar Smart, Food Power, Sustainable Food Cities, Fish Cities, apologies. And there's also Food for the Planet, a recent addition to that, and Bridging the Gap, another, which is looking at how do you ensure that everybody can have access to good, sustainable food. So involvement in the program allows you to have access to those campaigns and to be able to be proactively supported with resources in that. Just realized that there are 2 typos in there: sustainable rather than sustainable. Apologies. So why join the network then? What is the benefit for you? What's the benefit for Dorset? And interestingly, this now touches on the work that I'm involved in most, in terms of the impact of the network. And it was kind of fun just to think this through. To what's the sell, if you like, for joining SFP. SFP, Sustainable Food Places, for me at its best is a network for shared learning and innovation. It's this bustling network of exploration, of innovation, of experimentation, of different ways in which you can approach addressing these very complex, localized challenges that we face. So SFP offers a way of being able to learn from others, to be able to share experience, to be able to have access to peer-to-peer learning. And that's some of the sort of the key services that we offer as a program, is convening those spaces for that peer-to-peer learning to happen. So that can happen through holding events and webinars. We hold many number of webinars throughout the year that cover all sorts of topics, usually decided by the network. So the network will say, oh, we want to know more about local procurement, for example. So then we'd organize a webinar, bring people on. We also had our annual conferences to be able to bring that network together, a sort of celebratory event of feeling like part of a movement. And that's another kind of key aspect of being a part of the Sustainable Food Places program, is being able to work locally, but feel like you're a part of this more national movement. We talked about having access to an awards program that helps benchmark and celebrate success. Another aspect of work that we're progressing as well, part of my work, is about supporting you as a partnership to develop tools to track and understand your impact as a partnership. Sometimes it's very difficult when you're talking about sort of cause and effect in a partnership, because you're not able to talk about a specific organization leading to one specific outcome. So we're developing tools to think about how partnership impact can be captured. I'm thinking about those coordinating, convening aspects, and being able to emphasize how important they are for driving change. So we're currently working with partnerships to sort of get through that very difficult thing of demonstrating impact at a partnership level. We provide a framework for driving systems level change that I've introduced to you there in terms of the 6 themes. Each of those 6 themes has resources and toolkits to support you thinking how you might approach that in your place. We support you in building meaningful community engagement, and that's some of the work that we do at Food Matters, is providing tools, resources, and training to do meaningful community engagement, deliberative and participatory community engagement, and ensuring that's embedded in the way that you approach your strategy and your action planning. And we support you in the development of that strategy development and action planning by holding events, food summits, different ways of bringing in stakeholders into that space, and providing frameworks for thinking through that action planning process. And we provide some funding for peer-to-peer learning and support opportunities. So as a member, you'd have access to our PeerLink software, which allows you to approach other partnerships across the network with sort of bespoke support requests around something that you've seen that they do and you'd like to learn how they do that. So we provide small pots of money for people to be able to go to other partnerships, for example, to learn and to share knowledge, and to come back and implement that in your partnership. How to join? Well, as I've tried to emphasize, it's being an SFP member isn't about looking in one particular way, but it is about going about it in a process that builds that cross-sector representation. So some of those terms of reference that we expect all network members to have is ensuring that there is wide stakeholder representation on that partnership. So we don't like to see it too narrowly defined, say within public health, but to have representation, as you do in this room right now, from a wide set of organizations who are working in the food system. We like to see that you've met regularly for at least 6 months. We have some flexibility on all of these, but this is really just to sort of understand that there's a partnership formed, and it's been around long enough to feel like it's together and it's moving forward together. I'd like to see a named lead person. And this is about then how the organization or the partnership is hosted, and is there somebody who's being able to take some responsibility forward? That could, for example, be a chair of a steering group, or it could be a funded partnership coordinator. Then we'd like to see a food systems overview. And this can be, at this stage, really quite rough and ready, but it's for us is looking to see that you as a partnership have really tried to grapple with the complexity of the place that you're working in. So really trying to see that you have an understanding of some of the key players, those key stakeholders, as well as the key communities involved and the different challenges that they may be facing. This can often be a desk-based review at this point. Later on in the partnership development process, we like to see more on community-embedded participatory approaches, but just an opportunity to see that you've really try to grasp with some of that local complexity, and you have an understanding of that food system. And then we like to see a work plan covering the next 6 months. And this can be very much, for example, partnership focused at this point of the partnership development process. It could be looking at the next stage of how you start to deliver your strategy, or moving forward from there. And that's it, really. And the approach is designed to be flexible. And we try our very best not to be prescriptive in almost any way other than that emphasis on cross-sector working and community representation in that partnership development. The next membership round is Thursday, the 23rd of May. So it's a while off now. So you certainly have the 6-month period to meet regularly and to put an application together. And that will be the last round of this current phase. We are our third phase of the program, running to the end of next year before we start our next phase. So this will be the last membership round of this current phase of the SFP program. Great, thanks. I hope that gave you a little bit of an overview of SFP, Sustainable Food Places, and an idea of the approach to joining us if that's something that you feel is right for your partnership.
Callum, thanks very much. That's a wonderful introduction. Oh, here we all are again. Yeah, thank you so much. That was very, very clear and really appreciated. Could I just ask you a quick question? Could I jump in just before opening the floor? Could you just say, I didn't quite catch what you meant about the phases. So the May date is the final date that we would be able to apply, or is there another phase where there'd be applications available later on? I just wanted to get that clear before I open the floor.
Yes, unfortunately not able to give you too much clarity on that, other than that our funding runs until next year. So that would be the end of our phase. We have every expectation for a phase 4, and there will be other membership rounds, regardless of whether the program has a phase 4 or not. And it's quite a good distinction to make, I guess, just between what is the program, so the administrative side, our side, if you like, and the network itself, which has very much its own momentum and its own movement behind it.
Great, thank you very much. Sorry, folks, jumping in like that. Shouldn't do that as facilitator, but there you go. So if I could ask you, if you'd like to ask a question, either of Callum or of John, so we have at least kind of 20 minutes now, could you either put your hand up or use the reaction button at the bottom of your screen to put a hand up? And if you could please keep your questions concise and to the point of the meeting, that would be really helpful, and also introduce who you are and which organisation. So let me see, we've got, can we start with Julian? Would you like to ask your question and say who it's for?
Thanks, Sandra. I'm from Wiltshire actually, but I've been involved in food campaigning for a number of years and really keen to look at how we go about this in Wiltshire as well. So really question to Callum, I think. It's good to hear you talk about food import and export, and maybe John as well actually. But how do you sort of analyse and measure the food import and export into the county and start to get an idea of the sort of footprint it's got?
Happy to jump in there. I think John might have mentioned the import and export, because I wouldn't actually be able to provide you an answer to that, Julian, because no doubt an incredibly tricky thing to be able to do. And yes, and having to do that would be a case of really understanding the context of Dorset, I think, to be able to understand where to start. So apologies, I actually don't know if I have an answer for you on that one.
No problem, thank you. It is a tricky one.
I think for us, the observation arose most starkly in the first couple of weeks of lockdown, when there wasn't any provision by the supermarkets for getting food in and out at scale when people were locked down, and suddenly you realise actually there wasn't an awful lot of alternative to supermarket provision, and that the local provision was scant even across the rural parts of Dorset. And that I think was probably the most kind of anecdotally stark realization of how much we bring into the county to feed ourselves, and how little we actually source on our doorstep.
John, thanks, John. Thanks for your question, Julian. Candida, go ahead.
Hi, thank you both. That was incredibly inspiring from both of you. Thank you. I feel that we'll probably carry on the conversation, certainly with John and others. And we've been focusing in Bridport Food Matters really on trying to get things done within Bridport, but so being reluctant to extend ourselves because it's already quite a lot to do, it feels. But anyway, And in relation to sustainable food places in Callan, I'd like to get a slightly better idea of just how much one would need to do to start off, to say, you know, I mean, you've given us that list of what you need to do to apply to be part of the network, but, you know, how much action do you need to show on each of the 6 themes? For us in the past, Bridport was almost a sustainable food town in 2016 with Food Future Bridport, but we fell down on procurement and we worked very hard and there was nothing we could do to overcome that challenge at that point. You might remember that. So how far do we need to progress on each of those, and how extensive does that initial network need to be? You know, we can meet 6 times, but do we have to have an intersect, or do we have to combine the local authorities and the community organisations and the commercial at that stage, initial stage?
Short answer, no, you don't. And especially since COVID, the advice that we've been giving partnerships, you know, in the sort of understanding of the scarcity of things right now, is to be okay focusing where energies exist in your place. So if you've got a really vibrant community food movement, or you've got a really vibrant or really interested champion from public health and procurement, then it's great to be able to use that and to amplify that. What we do like to see is an attempt to touch on all the 6 themes. So we do like to see broad representation on a steering group. So we don't have to see every single one of those 6 themes met from a steering group member, but we do like to see an attempt for it to be systems and approach. And you definitely can have gaps there. And in fact, we encourage in our advice, especially in that sort of steering group creation of a partnership or whatever the governing body is that you create, is actually to really rely on those that are most interested at that point and most bought into this idea of partnership working, as that tends to drive a partnership from its early stages. So in terms of the work that will need to be done, it really is just those things. So when I did a membership review just quite recently, and when I'm going through, I'm looking for those things that I've mentioned. So we need to see a terms of reference, we need to see a list of stakeholders, we need minute meetings, and then we need to see a work plan and a food systems overview. If you've got those things, then that's sufficient for membership. If you move on to the awards process of bronze, silver, and gold, that's when those criteria around just how much are you really working at a systems level become much more significant.
Thank you. Thanks for your question, Candice. That's great. Certainly what really struck me also when you were speaking, Callum, was the resources on process. And when I've been looking at the website, I really recommend people look at the website. There are some toolkits which I found skillful and to the point, and really generous that they're there, because yeah, helps to give structure to the process, or to a process of developing partnership, I think, at each level.
Should I just share my screen just to show those? I was actually going to include that in the presentation, but what Sandra is referring to here is this, and it's accessible to whether you want to become a member or not. And we know partnerships that choose not to become SFP members for various reasons still tend to use the toolkit, so please use it as you wish. So each one of these is our process, as we've talked about, of how you might go through that initial building your partnership, but then thinking through the development of a strategy. And each one of these is sort of informed now by 10 years of partnership working. So yeah, just to encourage you to use those resources, whether you wish to become an SFP member or not. It's no problem.
Thanks, Callum. Do we have any other questions at the moment? Oh, yep, that's Daisy. That's a hand. So could we have Daisy and then Sue Belgrave, I think? Yes.
Yes, brilliant, thank you. So it was great hearing about all of the stuff that you're bringing, Callum, in terms of how sustainable food places is, yeah, I think evolving over COVID and things. So yeah, good to hear about those 6 issues and things. One of the things that I'm aware is that as Dorset, obviously within Dorset, we've got all sorts of different partnerships, having Bridport Food Matters, that's a partnership in itself. And other areas will have their own partnerships. In BC, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, we've got the Access to Food Partnership. So whatever transpires could be a partnership of partnerships if it's a route that we decide to go down. Are there other areas that have that kind of approach, and how have you seen that working?
Yes, absolutely. partnerships of partnerships does seem to be the way of working these days. There isn't an answer then to what makes sense for you. And there might be a case that you already feel like you have enough partnerships. And what you really need is actually just a few moments a year to bring those partnerships together, to share thinking and to set collective vision. And that's really the sort of the spectrum, if you like, of how established a partnership can be. We have partnerships that are independent organizations that is the sole focus of their work. We have others that are much more informal, that are much more about connecting different networks that already exist, and to share learning across them. So don't be scared off by the idea of, oh my goodness, it's another network. It doesn't actually have to be another formalized network. It can be informal. It can be about you getting together as a group of networks and talking specifically about food.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your question, Daisy. And I think, Sue, did you have a question?
Yes,
Sue
so,
Belgrave?
hi, I'm new to this network and relatively recently arrived in Dorset, so I'm just kind of finding my way. And my question actually really is very similar to Daisy's, because and this is about just looking for clarification, probably from Callum. The sense that, you know, looking at your 91 food partnerships, there are some which are just towns and some which are whole counties. And as you know, looking at the representation here, there's clearly Bridport is already established as a food partnership. How does it work in that sense of, I mean, could you have a town and a county separately, or does that, how does it, and is that a timing thing? Because I imagine that getting a whole county on board might be a lot more complicated. So
Great.
can you explain a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Sue, largely because it's also something that we're working through as a national program. Relatively new thing, these county partnerships. In the last sort of 5 years, they've come together. We now have 19 across the network, and they're growing very quickly. In the last membership round, the majority were county level partnerships. That question of sort of the ordering of things, or how do you bring in different scales as we're looking at it in terms of a town being in a county, again, I'm sorry to give you a cop out of an answer, but it has to depend on the way things are working in Dorset. So we have some, for example, in Shropshire, where it has made a lot of sense to have a county level partnership, partly because of the geographies and the rural nature of things, partly because there hasn't been any smaller scale partnerships set up in that county. We have others like East Sussex that have many established partnerships already. And they've been going through a process recently of then asking each other, what's the value added of a county level partnership? And that's a process they had to go through themselves and had to go through with the county authority. And initially there was some pushback from the local partnerships, a little bit of feeling of almost sort of territorial aspect of things, and a feeling, well, aren't we talking about doing local level work? What's the county's involvement in that? It's been really interesting watching them go through that process and to work out areas where actually county involvement is really important, whether it be, for example, around procurement or land use. So they've gone through that process and they've now identified areas where they all see value in a county partnership and how it can complement. So it must be a case of not standing on toes, but thinking about how you complement these different scales of local work and larger work. And it's important to initiate those conversations with town-based partnerships early on in that process, so they feel included and not sort of trampled on by the development of a county level partnership.
Thank you. And I wonder, John, whether what thoughts you have about this kind of town county, because clearly you're really amazingly connected across the whole county.
Yeah. My head explodes some days with things that might happen, and really it's not about holding it in my head, it's just making sure other people hear about it. So that's one of the reasons for being here. So you know, just sort of in one ear and out the other to the right place. That's the goal. I think the moment that we have in Dorset is special at this point. So we've just had the formation a year ago of our integrated care system, which probably has gone under the radar for a lot of people, but essentially it's a complete redesign in theory and in practice of how health and social care is run in Dorset. That makes a big difference because it's the first time that we've had a properly joined up intention to work together with all partners. So not just local authority and health working together, which has happened around the kind of health and social care agenda for a while, but also looking at education, looking at employment and economic development and so on, looking at partners in the voluntary community sector, a whole raft of different partners who are now sitting around the table together to look at issues. And the other thing that's changed is that the NHS has understood, in the way that it's described the integrated care system, is that the NHS and health is only 20% of our health and well-being. So the medical bit is only about 20% influenced by the NHS. The rest of our health and well-being is to do with how we live, where we live, who we live with, what environment we live in, whether we live in good housing, poor housing, where we have good opportunities for work or otherwise. So our health and well-being is mostly not medical. It's no surprise to us when you kind of say it like that, but actually this is a big step change in terms of how we set our agenda as an integrated care system. Consequently, the NHS and the local authority are doing more and more joined up thinking about how we can tackle some of these things together. So there's been discussions around housing and looking at all sorts of different things to do with, social housing, key worker housing, affordability, and trying to put some kind of joined up thought process behind that, how we can influence the landlords, the private rented markets, and various other things as well. That approach is something that's being applied to all sorts of wicked problems currently. They're not all going to get solved quickly by any means, but food and is part of this picture. There is a clear understanding within not only the sort of integrated care system, which is everybody's kind of collective view on this stuff, but also within some of the ambitions for the 5-year forward plan for the NHS in Dorset, one of which is about tackling childhood obesity. And there's another objective in there, which is about living better for longer in Dorset, in increasing the healthy lifespan of Dorset residents. That comes about through good diet. It's one of the foundational things within Maslow's hierarchy of need. We need to eat well in order to live well. So there's some really clear agenda points here at a big scale, which means that looking at this as a Dorset agenda makes a lot of sense. Daisy and I were chatting about this a couple of weeks ago and saying that Dorset is made up of 2 local authorities: Dorset Council, which is largely rural, 400,000 people living in the rural part of Dorset, and 400,000 people living in the conurbation of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. We have different opportunities in those spaces. One of the things we have slightly more of in the Dorset Council area is land to grow things. So what would be the best sense here is to kind of see this as a county-wide solution, and our integrated care system as a county-wide that includes Dorset Council and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. So we should maybe have a look at some of these things at a big scale. And whilst that momentum is running, can we nudge this into the wider conversation about net zero? Can we nudge this into looking at us being more resilient in our communities generally, so that we can deal with the adverse climate events and so on? So there's a whole lot of momentum there already. The experiences of the cost of living and the way that that's been approached through Daisy's work and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole and within Dorset Council area has been really impressive about getting in amongst it, working with communities and building on need as it's experienced in the different places. So there's just so many things. It feels like a very pregnant moment at the, to see this not just at the town, the village and the individual level, but to see this as a strategic set of goals as well, and to use this maybe this period of time in the next few months to go on that journey together and to see where we might end up. Might this be a full county-wide food partnership? I don't know. Could this be a network of partnerships that continues like this to meet in different spaces and places? Probably. And are there some things where, because we've now got some serious players around the table, and I include the agricultural community as well, the farmers, the growers. We don't have very many horticultural growers in Dorset. I think there's about 17 large scale providers in Dorset. That's nothing compared to the amount of agriculture businesses in Dorset. So can we change the dial on some of that, particularly when the economics of milk and dairy production is so challenging? So I think we've got lots and lots of things that we can kind of nudge. And if we get the right people in the room, perhaps we can do great things.
Lovely. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. That was a wonderful resume. There are so many details. I'm just aware that there's several hands up and also some questions in the chat. So could I ask Callum to look at the chat and answer the question on funding? And John, I think the integrated care system, there's a question there. And Wendy, would you like to go next, followed by Alex?
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, it's Wendy from Help and Kindness. It was just a point of clarification, really. We're talking about local partnerships, like small partnerships and county partnerships, and whether, in my mind, the bigger county one would be more about some of that big scale. I think we've already answered it, but I'm just from my own peace of mind around things like procurement and looking at all that, whereas the smaller local ones would be more around, you know, growing projects and producing food locally, buying and selling it locally. Is that the way it seems to work, Callum, that the county would have the overview of the big scale stuff, and then you've got where you've got all those little partnerships, that the partnerships then tend to focus on that, the growing and the sustainability locally? I'm just trying to get my head around how it would all work, really, because we have got little pockets of partnerships, I suppose.
Yeah, Wendy, that is how it usually works. There are exceptions to that. But for the most part, county partnerships do try and grapple with those larger geographic scale problems. One of the challenges that we can see at county level is grappling with sort of place-based identity, which city partnerships do much better. And by that I mean representing a place. So when you've got a city, for example, it tends to have more of a sense of identity to it. When you're talking about a county level, you're talking about such differences in geographies, but socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and it becomes much more difficult to have those kind of representative processes at that scale. So they tend to do better at a local scale, and that can come around in things like local projects, and you've mentioned a few, food growing or whatever it might be, and then supported by that higher level county partnership that are focusing on some of those bigger questions around procurement and land use planning and some of those aspects as well. But just as a caveat to say that we do also have some partnerships that do a very good job actually of grappling with some of those representative challenges that you can face at larger scales. So there is an option to be able to get into sort of some of those sort of more nuanced aspects of partnership working as well, even at a county level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. And just before we have a question from Alex, could I ask you if you're interested in continuing this conversation at another meeting, to make sure that you put your email address and your name in the chat, because it's not a registered meeting. So please do that. And Alex, did you still have a question for one of the speakers?
I'm afraid I'm going to be what I always do at these sort of meetings is pull it down a bit and say,
right, okay.
It all sounds lovely, but it all sounds like a talking shop. And actually what you need is action, and it's better very often to start with small actions and join them together at a higher point later than to start trying to make an umbrella and get people to come in under your umbrella. There's a couple of bits that it's all very well saying, you know, we've got a lot of land in agriculture, but you then butt up against, I'm afraid, economics. Farmers are doing what they're doing because that is what they need to do to make money. The government have changed the rules about sustainability, about biodiversity and such like, so they're too busy reading gumph to actually start thinking sideways at the moment. You might be better, perhaps, engaging much more with parish and town councils and pushing them to actually ask for, and possibly even, let's say, run themselves, things like allotments. Get people to actually grow, you know, get village-based growing going, separate from the expecting farmers to do it. It's the same with horticulture. I teach horticulture, and there's a lot of my students over the last 10 years have all started saying, oh, well, I'm going to grow vegetables and that'll be lovely, and I'm going to grow them and give them to the food bank and this, and they forget, or they haven't yet learnt, that it's hard work and it takes a lot of time. There has to be some income coming back, and there has to be some incentive, because an awful lot of these vegetable schemes fail after 18 months because they just can't keep it going. They haven't got the energy. They don't have private incomes. They don't make enough money from it. Now, I don't see how you can tell people to do these things. You've got to actually help them to do it. And I would have said we need to engage with parish and town councils and all the local groups that you already know, and get them to do a little bit more each, and then talk to each other rather than try and set this lovely umbrella up. I know I always sort of knock these things down a bit, but we've got an awful lot of, shall we say, parallel organisations who are talking very good green things, but they're not actually doing it. They're talking, and that worries me. Okay, that's my point. I'm not sure if it's a question or not, but
no, but it's thank you very much for the points you've made there, and bringing in the parish councils as part of the idea. It's really appreciated. John, I'm not sure if your hand's up as partly in response. Would that be the case? So if we could have John and then Julian and then Maya.
Thanks for letting me just jump in there. Alex, you're absolutely on the money in terms of starting small. That's exactly, I think, why this has its timeliness at this point. You know, the work that was certainly at Help and Kindness, and I know DCAN has also done a lot of work in connecting up with these sorts of small scale growing and different ways of looking at food and food consumption. That's what we've been building on up to this point. And just in case it wasn't clear, the Feeding Dorset event in the early part of this year was bringing together those groups in exactly that way, because suddenly together we were a lot stronger and a lot more inspiring, and the kind of good news spreads. So I think it's that, but I don't think that's sufficient, if I'm perfectly honest. I think that we need to push at all levels at all times, and then hopefully we get some luck along the way and something will fall in our direction that we want to move on. So I think there's something about, you know, fortune favors a prepared mind. So if we're thinking big as well as working small, then we're much more likely to progress on all the fronts and move faster further together. It does build off that small scale though, and it will only land when it means something to individuals. But those individuals also have political power, and they have economic power, and they have social power, and will be there to kind of influence things like procurement decisions in schools or in church halls. You know, where do you get your food for your community lunches? Well, you know, do you buy it from the cash and carry or the supermarket, or do you get it from the local allotments? And also, I think there's something about really doing that small scale work that helps us understand the capacity of us as a community, a whole county, to do things. We know we're very time poor. We know most of us are struggling to make a living with two incomes coming in and working all the hours, not to mention those that don't have two incomes. So we are in a very, very difficult environment. But I think if we are having these conversations collectively, then perhaps we can spot some opportunities there, including nudging the dial economically for farmers in the county as well. There's a lot more diversity in farming in Dorset, I think, because of our special characteristics of landscape and protected spaces, working with heritage and some of our beautiful landscapes. That actually has more latitude than some areas where there's sort of monoculture. Dorset Airbnb have done some amazing work around working in protected landscapes, and I think, you know, there's a lot of variability in there as well. And also there are still some small farms, you know, which is quite unusual for England. So I think we've just got to try everything and hope that some of these things all align and we get that little bit of luck and things start to move forward. But I think we can't just stop at small. We do need to be ambitious as well, if I may offer that.
Thank you very much. That's great. Can we have Julian? Do you want to ask a question?
Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, John. You mentioned those 17 large-scale horticultural producers in Dorset, and how it needs more. And I think that's absolutely key on the production side, certainly. And may help with the consumption side a little bit. And I just wondered if you could just expand a bit more on that. And is there any work to try and increase that, and how are you going about it? Any success? Yeah. Thanks.
The conversation at the moment is the Dorset Local Economic or Local Enterprise Partnership are having conversations around what agriculture looks like in Dorset at the moment. I don't know if there's anyone here who's part of that network, but they're also looking at that issue of diversity and working smarter within the within agriculture in Dorset, which may include diversification, or it may include looking at certain types of land differently. So there is a conversation going on which has separately arisen within that within the agriculture community that is moving down interestingly synergistic kind of lines at the moment, I would say, and that's a conversation that we're trying to kind of weave in, and hopefully we'll have some involvement at the Feeding Dorset event in October.
Thanks very much, John. So following on, Maya, did you have a question?
Well, again, it's a bit like Alex. I'm not sure I've actually got questions. I've just got sort of observations. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yep, it's good.
Okay. And forgive me if my thoughts are a little bit muddled. That's because I am quite a muddled thinker. But there are sort of three things I wanted to say. Firstly, I've just read George Monbiot's book about Regenesis, which is about food and food security, and ends up, frankly, for me, in a bit of a la-la land. But nonetheless, it suddenly made me feel very aware of the need to make people aware that food is going to be a real battleground in the next decades to come, either because of climate change or because of wars. So I think I had this notion of trying to get some sort of local and even national program of dig for victory type of thing that they had to do in the Second World War, where people were deliberately encouraged to grow their own. Now, I know a lot of us do grow our own. I understand that is not it's not so new these days as it might have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I do think there's a lot of land that I observe which could be potentially considered for allotments or some sort of community growing along the lines of food. The other thing I had a thought about was that we are having increasing numbers of housing developments, and they are obliged to do this, that, and the other as part of their remit. Can we not see some encouragement for them to create allotment areas in new build projects? It's probably a ridiculous thing to suggest, and none of this is particularly focused because I'm a bit unfocused. But these are just my thoughts, and I agreed with Alex that I think, well, I agree you've got to start both ends, but I do think you have to start small. I really do think local is the real key to a lot of things. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Thank you very much, and I love that idea of connecting the allotments with housing developments. I think that's fantastic. And my sense is what I'd really like to do. I think there've been some great questions, and at the same time, what I would really like to do is just have a moment of going into some breakout rooms, if that would be okay with you, just so that everybody could have a chance to respond to a question. Does that sound all right? It would be quite brief, sort of 10 minutes, but I think it would give all voices a chance to say something in the smaller groups. And the question that I thought, having listened to this evening, that's relevant is, who do you need to talk to be able to link up and to be more effective county-wide? Who do you need to talk to? What other people, organisations? It might just be one bit that you sense is a missing link for you in your particular work. I think that's the key question, which I will put in the chat. And if I could just put you into breakout rooms, it'll only be for about 10 minutes maximum. And if I can ask you to come back to the main group with sort of 2 or 3 key points or key missing links that you feel that your group has, and then we can bring all that information together as part of this first meeting, which is sort of doing something, I think, to start to identify from many different perspectives where some of the gaps might be. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and I wish you luck, and I'll pop the question up. And then, so the question again is, where are the missing links? Who do you need to be able to talk to? And I'll bring you all back in about 10 minutes, and then we'll have our closing session. Should see the rooms coming up. I think you've all been invited to join one. And it'd be great to get this information. Callum, I've popped you into one, I think, but if you need to go, feel free.
It's okay. I'm going to, yeah, I need to get on with the next thing, if that's all right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for staying for this amount of time, and I've really appreciated your input. It's been fantastic.
Good. Yeah, I hope it felt useful for you.
If there's anything we can offer back in terms of if you'd like a recording of the meeting or any of the information that comes up from here, I'm happy to send it to you.
Just keep doing the good work, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself.
All right.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Sandra.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Oh no.
Sandra, would it be
Hello.
possible to have printouts of the information that the two speakers gave? Because my daughter is really interested to read them.
Sure.
Is that, I just wondered if that was possible. That would be great. Thanks. I shall shut up now.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Let's wait for everybody to pop in. I think a few more to come. Welcome back. Woo. Okay. Oh, great. Well, even if that just gives an opportunity for people, the groups are a bit uneven in the end because some people went, but I hope that was okay and hopefully somehow useful. Is there any feedback from each of the groups? I've just got a name down from each of the groups, but would anybody like to share some key points that came up so that we see? There was the group with Carl and David. Does anybody want to say something? No? Yep, David, key point.
Sandra, I'll say a couple of brief words.
Thank you.
So we talked around, that would happen at the same time. We talked around a few groups of people that perhaps were missing from this call and might need to be engaged in one way or another.
Wonderful.
I'd start with actually consumers in the first instance, the 800,000 people that might benefit from this partnership. Because I think there's always the potential for a good intentions gap, that those people will say what they would do, but may not follow it through. So some sense of that group of stakeholders being consulted. And that led me to a suggestion to Carl, which was, this is about behaviour change in the end in consumption as much as it is around supply. And so I think there are some good examples elsewhere where behavioural scientists or university departments have been involved in trying to shape the sort of actions that do lead to real behaviour change.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Another one?
I'll just add at the other end of that journey, there's absolutely the supply side, be that in agriculture, aquaculture, or food production, and a group of people with significant commercial interest there. And that final other behaviour question might be about how we marry the commercial with the social interest as well as the environmental.
Thank you very much. That's great. So these points will be recorded and I'll also take them down afterwards and make a list to send around. So again, if you're interested in continuing these conversations, please make sure at Health and Kindness and Dorset Can that we do have your name and email address, otherwise we won't be able to contact you. So I think there was a group with Candida in it. I don't know if you have anything.
We didn't get to quite decide who was going to feed back. Would either of you two, Harriet or Daisy, or shall I just say a few words and you can pitch in?
You go ahead, Candida.
Right. Okay. Well, my particular thing, I think, was on the sort of policy side of it, the county, whether it's cabinet involvement, as well as, it's great to see that there are people on this call who has got the, John has got the link with the public health, and that's really exciting. And I can see that somebody else, I can't remember who it is, Carl, on the sustainability team. For us as a community, we're focused particularly on the community groups and community organisations, but we do also link up with the people who are involved with the retail side. We're trying to close that gap, shorten the food miles. We also work with the local authority in Bridport, but certain things we really need to address at a wider level, whether it's county wide or beyond, which is particularly things like planning policy. So
Yeah.
until we can get more access to land for young people to do horticulture, small scale, long-term leases or even sale of land, and they'd be allowed to live on it, we're not going to really be able, you know, we've got a number of obstacles like this. So we need the champions within the local authority who can really make a change and make a difference on that. And the allies within the local authority who can, within the county authorities who can really help us move that forward. Another point that I think we wanted to make was we really like the idea of an annual Dorset food conference, of really the value of bringing people together, the wider community. And I think it was John again who mentioned, you know, the idea of, I don't know if you said an informal gathering, but it is that networking, that there's so much richness to kind of exchange. Was there anything else, Harriet or Daisy? Another key point.
Perhaps the point of learning from past experience. There have been various, you know, there was Bournemouth and Poole was the first sustainable food city, one of the first sustainable food cities, and there was a lot of learning that came from that, and I think we were all just very wary of another set of series of meetings and the time and energy that's needed to go in that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yes, that's really good to remind us of that past experience and what we can learn from it and carry forward. Thank you. Did that cover it for you, Daisy, as well? Is that all good? Great. Okay, so then there was a group, I think, with Belinda in was that Belinda? Was Belinda? John? Was that a group? Yes. Anything to share?
We were busy chatting away as well, so we didn't sort of do a little summary. I'll try and remember. We were talking about just that, as John said at the start, it's a really good moment because there's so much going on, and the sort of attitude certainly in Dorset Council, I don't know about BCP, I'm afraid, but it's kind of, we're kind of pushing at more open doors than we have been. So it's a case of kind of joining up and sort of, yeah, asking for, rather than trying to push for something that's asking for behavior change, it's kind of setting the policies in place to enable people to make those choices. I'm not a fan of lecturing people about eating more plant-based food or whatever, but I think it's really important that through procurement policies, or as Candida was just saying, through the planning system, which is national rather than Dorset Council, but we can put motions through to get them to lobby upwards and to live by their own lobbying requests, if you like. And also things like the tourism sector. So, for example, in Lyme Regis, we have lots of fantastic food businesses that are really good at buying locally produced food, sustainable food, but absolutely hopeless at putting vegan choices on the menu. Yeah. And, you know, you never want to sort of make a fuss and say, this should be there, but we need to make it easier for them to make the choices available for people.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? I wasn't really taking notes because we were chattering away so nicely, but
it's already great to have tourism brought in. And if that's all right, John, I'm going to jump to the other two groups because we're going to run out of time unless you have a burning point to add there. No, you're all right. So there was a group with Wendy, I think, in it, and then a group with Tracy in it. Wendy, did you anything from your group? Doesn't have to be you, but if there was.
Oh, I forgot. Is it who was feeding back? It wasn't me. We nominated a feeder backer.
Julian, great, thank you.
Okay, well, Ken was going. Oh, he's there again. All right.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so 2 points we came up with, I think, if I can remember rightly, the others will correct me if I'm wrong. One is an interesting one to connect with parish councils and allotments to suggest that there might be some sort of semi-formal scheme for the allotmenteers who produce excess products to actually take that into the local food banks, which I think is quite nice. I'll take that to my parish council allotment, definitely, because I know who to talk to there. The other one about people to talk to is farmers. because it occurs to me that there's going to be quite a few dairy farmers who've been in it for life now. It's all they know how to do. They're probably fed up of seeing the prices tumble, of being screwed to the floor by the supermarkets. And they may well want to get out and allow younger farmers in. So talking to farmers, I think, is something that's going to be quite essential. And I personally get the chance to talk to consumers a little bit. I take Belinda's point about you don't want to lecture people about plant-based diets, etc., because that turns people off quite quickly. Although I do like the way that the word vegan has been replaced by plant-based. I think that's been very helpful because vegan has become a pejorative these days. I do get a chance to write in the Blackmore Vale every now and then on the Green Party column, and every now and then I just throw into people how much we import in the way of fruit and vegetables and how we really need to do something about that, and how inefficient the use of land is when you try to grow, do dairy and meat farming from it. So I just put information like that. So I think it's consumers as well as a link that that we need to be connecting to.
Right.
I think that's all I've got. Julian, anything else?
I think that's
Yeah, just integrated care partnership.
Thank you. That's great. That's some additional points there, and good to hear the word farmers, which I don't think we've heard yet this evening. So, oh yes, we did once from John, I think, but there we go. And Tracy, or someone from your group, I just took random names. Is Tracy there?
I am here, sorry.
There you are.
Yeah, I think it's already popped in the chat because I hastily was typing as well.
Oh, thank you.
But there was a third one. Well, there's more than that, to be honest. But networking and a map and a directory. And we talked about the fridge network, hubbub, and we talked about getting people in the same room, if possible. Like all of the different allotment leaders. Sorry, I'm just being hugged from here. My daughter's just coming to thank me for her dinner. That's nice, isn't it? So yeah, I think that's, if anyone else wants to jump in, I probably forgot some bits, but that's kind of where I think that the key thing was the networking and some kind of directory of sorts, which we as DCAN could possibly do on a lovely networking map. We could get an extra layer, I'm sure. We looked into it, but it depends where that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think we discussed a directory being a great idea, but also that the need for continued maintenance, it might be something that would be great for the council to take up on because they have the resourcing to do something like that. So it was about maintenance. Just my experience of directories is they get out of date very quickly as funding drops out. So I think that you've covered everything. The community fridges, there's lots and lots of brilliant projects going on. So it'd be lovely to hear more about them and know where they are.
Great. So thank you very much. I just completely dropped out of the meeting there, so I'm taking that as a sign that my Zoom's about to collapse. But before that happens, I want to say thank you so much. I'm sorry if it's a slightly abrupt ending, but I do want to keep the time. I've got some dates here, which I was trying to put in the chat. So we've put some dates in the diary, which I'm going to give you. And if you've put your email in the chat, I'll make sure I also email them to you. But these are dates for possible continuing conversations. So one in September 27th, they're all Wednesdays, September the 27th, November the 29th, December the 13th. Don't worry if you're not getting these. I'm just not going to risk trying to put them in chat. I will send them to you. January the 17th and February the 7th. So all of those will be from 6 to 7:30. We'll make sure that those go out to all of you. But the idea is really to start this series of conversations and also not forgetting at Health and Kindness's meeting in October. What was the date for that, John or Wendy? Was that?
It's the 11th of October. It is. We are a little bit limited on space. This is the problem. We found it hard to get a very big venue. So we can take about 100, and we have invited over 100. But if anyone's really keen to come, please get in touch and we'll we can certainly put you on our waiting list, because until people respond to if they can come or not, we don't really know what the space is like. But it would be good to get some of you along, certainly. I know there are people already from Dorset can come in, so that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite a wide invite. It's very varied. We've got growing projects and things, as well as food banks and things. So yeah, 11th of October, and it's in Blandford. We've tried to be central.
Great, that's wonderful. Thank you. Tracy, you've got your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, could you just remind us the date of that again, please? Sorry.
October the 11th.
11th, Wednesday the 11th.
Yeah. So,
It is,
sorry, Wendy.
I was just going to say, it is invite. Please don't just turn up, because I don't know if we'll have space. But I will, if people are interested, I can certainly put you on a list. That's fine. Please get in touch.
Thank you so much for giving of your time for coming here this evening. And I'd like to thank John and Callum, who had to leave, for speaking with us and opening the conversations. And let's see if we can start this journey and what happens as we go along. I'm here on behalf of Dorset Climate Action Network. There are a few colleagues. If you're not already a member, please go to dorsetcan.org and see if you'd like to join up. It's free, and we're just stronger together. So I wish you well, have a good evening, and thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers now.
Thank you.
Cheerio. Okay.
I'm trying to work out how to get off.
Oh, you're just turning cartwheels.
I've not done it on my phone before. So.
Bye for
I don't
now.
want to leave because I don't want to kick it off and then you don't get the stuff. I want you to end it. So
yeah, I'm going to try and save the chat and then.
yeah, that's what I mean. If you do it, then you get to save it. If I do it, I might mess it up.
Okay, save chat. I've done it. All right.
Okay.
Take care. Good
Thanks,
night. Bye, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.